Hi, I'm Margaret Ikpoh, and I'm the Vice Chair of Professional Development at the Royal College of GPs. I'd like to welcome you all to the next conversation in our RCGP Live series. Tonight, we're talking about championing our international medical graduate colleagues and supporting them to thrive in general practice. We've got a wonderful panel of speakers for you with a wide breadth of perspectives, experiences and views, and I think this will be a very interesting discussion. If you haven't seen one of these before, these conversations are about how we can speak to our patients directly and how we can speak to you, the college, about what the college is doing. We can explain how we are working for you and your patients. You can put your questions to our panel by using the hashtag RCGP Live on social media or comment below the feed if you're watching on YouTube. The video will be captioned and a full transcript will be made available after the live event. So what is an international medical graduate? Well, they are someone like me who's obtained their primary medical qualification somewhere outside of the UK. Almost half of our incoming GP trainees are international medical graduates, and from an RCGP point of view, 33% of our members are international medical graduates, and we would expect this figure to grow in line with our future workforce in the coming years. This is really exciting in a lot of ways, and general practice is enriched by all of our colleagues' experiences. But there are notable areas where support is really needed. For example, trainees may be moving from different countries to start training. So that means finding accommodation, getting a phone, a bank account, and a lot of practical support is crucial. International graduates also often need another visa to continue working post-CCT, and this can often be a struggle. This is an issue that is unique to general practice because our training programs are only 3 years long, as opposed to 6+ years in some hospital specialties. I raised this point last year when I appeared with my colleagues in front of the Health and Social Care Select Committee, but was disappointed when the Home Office first suggested that we were scaremongering. From surveying our international trainees and from the trainees that I've had in practice as a trainer, it was clear that this is a real problem. So our policy and campaigns team have run a successful campaign lobbying for the Home Secretary to review these rules and improve this for our future trainees. Thank you very much to the 4,367 GPs who joined us in writing to the Home Secretary. From this response, we secured a parliamentary debate on this question as well, and this was hosted by Matt Warman, MP, as the Home Office Minister, who's committed to asking his officials to find a solution. We are working really hard behind the scenes to ensure the government are aware of the importance of our international colleagues to the future of general practice, and more importantly, make the changes needed to improve things for them. If you are interested, the link to this campaign report will be shared in the chat for you to read. And we will be sharing any response we receive from the Home Secretary or the government in due course. Now, we've run a poll on our social media on the biggest areas of support needed for international graduates. On Twitter, exams and isolation are the top issues, with 33.3% of respondents for each. On Instagram, visas and exams are coming top, 35% each. So we've spoken about the work we've done so far as a college to tackle some of these, but now I'd like to turn our attention to our esteemed panel to share their experiences. So panelists, if you could please introduce yourselves briefly the first time you speak. Marla, I'll come to you first. Do these responses reflect some of the challenges you've seen in your work?
Margaret, firstly, thank you very much for the privilege of contributing to this important session. For attendees, I'm Mala Rao. I'm a public health academic from Imperial College, London, from the Department of Primary Care and Public Health. I have 4 decades in the NHS, and I worked at local, national, and global levels during that time. I have been involved with the NHS England's race equality strategy since it was launched in 2015, and I led the development of the International Medical Graduates Induction Programme, which was launched formally in June of last year. So that's who I am. Does it resonate with what I know? Absolutely, it does. I began the business of preparing the IMG induction program with focus group discussions, which I had with international medical graduates, some of whom had only just arrived and had about 6 months in the country, some of whom had up to 5 years in the country. And it was very, very insightful what they said to us. These are the 2 things that you found, came tops in your poll. The other bit that certainly came up very frequently in our focus group discussions was language and communication, but certainly the isolation issue was notable. And so we've got a section on pastoral care, but perhaps we will come to that during the course of this conversation, Margaret. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marla. Khaled, if I may come to you, as a current trainee, does any of this resonate with you at the moment?
Thank you, Margaret, for the introduction and for the event for today. I'm Khaled. I'm the RCGP GP trainee chair, and I'm representing around, I think, 16,000 GP trainee around the UK now. And I'm currently in my last year in the training, and I located in the Northwest. And the difficulties which you mentioned about, or the points were mentioned for the IMGs, or International Medical Graduate, which I am one of them, where I graduated or completed my training outside the UK, then joined the GP training in UK recently. The rationale for what was mentioned about some difficulties was truly, yes, we could face as international medical graduate coming to the UK, especially visas, especially the initial settlement in the beginning, which myself I faced. But being today in the representative of the GP training all over the UK, I think it's a good chance, or could be a good I'd say support for all of the trainee, as the representative of the GP training now is one from the international media graduate. So this could give the an example of anyone could come and could help and could do further support to the trainee and further with the international medical graduate trainee.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Khaled. And Khaled, if I might say so, actually, I think you've probably made history. I might stand corrected on this, in the fact that I cannot recall us having an international graduate as our ART chair, but I'm sure someone will come back to me. And I think it's really, why do I mention this? I think it's really empowering that our trainees, who we know are growing in number from the international community, see you where you are, and know that there are no boundaries that they cannot cross, because often people, even when they CCT, do feel limited by their scope of practice. So Damilola, I'll come to you next. Thank you very much for coming. I first met you at a faculty event, if you remember, from a few months ago now, on visas, and it was so enlightening that I recall asking your faculty to put together an FAQ because it was just amazing. So do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Margaret. Thank you for inviting me to this live discussion. My name is Damilola Sogbesan, and I'm the Force 5 GP. I'm based in Southeast Hampshire, where I live and work. Also the Equality and Diversity lead for the Southwest Thames faculty, as Margaret highlighted. As part of also as a community where I live as an individual, my role as in the community, I also work as a local councillor for the Gresham Parish Council in Hampshire. I started my EDI lead role in the middle of last year when the Southwest Thames faculty advertised this this role, and I was sort of inspired following an evidence that Margaret gave at the House of Commons regarding the visa issues. So I basically represent the faculty on equality and diversity issues by raising awareness of the EDI issues that we face. And I've been able to attend meetings where I raise this issue. I currently work closely with the RCGP College EDI team and other EDI reps in different faculty across the country, where we hold regular meetings and discuss what other reps are doing in their regions. I mean, one important area, obviously, as Margaret highlighted in the introduction, was the issue that members are facing regarding the international medical graduates post-CCT visa. So as regards, I work with the faculty board members to create a webinar which our members was able to gather and have an update information about the health and care worker visa, which is what is needed post-CCT. As an IMG myself, I've been through the different visa application process as a junior doctor, from applying through the point-based system and going through the indefinite leave to remain. It's a 5-year process. So I think this is what most international medical graduates will face when they come to the country. Regarding my where I live in Hampshire, I recognize the importance of investing in the community. So I was able to join the local parish council, where I contribute my role, my expertise in community development, and obviously it does help myself, my family to integrate fully well as a life in the UK. I mean, I must say community engagement is quite important. It's an important role for international medical graduates when they come, leave the country and come live and settle in a new country in the UK. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Damilola. And just listening to your experiences of community engagement is so important for our trainees, particularly Marla's picked up on the point that we'll hopefully discuss later around isolation. And certainly what you do, and I always encourage our trainees, not many of them even know that faculties exist, and that could be for a whole host of reasons. I think there's things that we could do from the college perspective to showcase the work we do a little bit better. But certainly what you've done in your faculty, particularly including them and particularly involving local communities, local parishes, just great examples. So I'll come to Sigi, who is next, but by no means last or least. She is a former Inspire Award winner. And I would just like your insights, Sigi, as to what the landscape is like in Scotland at the moment.
Hello, Margaret. Good evening, all. Just to introduce myself quickly, I've been a GP in Scotland for about 20 years, involved in postgraduate education 18 years, and I've been a trainer within my practice, I think, for 13 or 14 years. So that's one-on-one in the practice. and on Scottish Council and various representative roles. We welcome this really important discussion tonight, and I was thinking through some of the regional differences that there are in Scotland. I think we are working hard to try and recognise and celebrate the differences for this extremely valuable workforce. And a number of years ago, within the GP training unit, we developed a programme called the STEP programme, which was the Scottish Trainee Enhanced Programme. It's got excellent feedback, and that was a kind of very novel way of approaching training and induction for our training colleagues who are coming from international medical graduate backgrounds. So this is where you spend time with your trainer out of the practice, and at the moment it's 2 full days, and during that programme there's lots of sessions: cultural transition, communication skills, active bystander training, there's unconscious bias training, success factors in training, and also understanding about reflective practice and feedback. And as part of that, there's also sessions on teaching the trainer around culturally sensitive feedback for the trainees. So it's really valuable. That's within the GP programme, and more recently within National Education for Scotland has introduced the Softer Landing, Safer Care programme. And this started after a lot of what it encompasses comes off the back of a paper that was in ASME at the end of last year, end of 21, international medical graduate experience before and after migration. So that has then fed into a very specialised induction programme for our trainees. When somebody's coming to Scotland and it's their first role within the NHS in Scotland, they're invited to a pre-induction seminar. Then all the trainees, despite experience up to date, are invited to a 2-week-long induction programme. It's very localised and tailored to which region of Scotland they're working in, because there's a lot of regional differences. For example, up in the Highlands and Islands, access is different for some of the, and what the hospitals offer can vary. So what happens is the trainees are having a longer induction. They're invited to join an international medical graduate Facebook group where there's a lot of vital and key information on settling and basic information on there. And the trainer themselves, often it's set by the deanery, and they have quite a structured conversation which really helps to form and inform which stage your trainee is at. And that conversation, there's a checklist, so it's quite standardised across Scotland, and that will encompass very simple things such as actual basic human needs, so accommodation, travel, visa issues, funds. One of the questions is around, do you have enough funds to take you to your first paycheck? Where are your family? Are they having issues getting across to the UK or to Scotland? And also, if you have family here, how do you access schools, register for nurseries? Things like that are covered. So recognising that is a source of stress is really important, because if you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you're worrying about all these basic things, it's going to be difficult to get further on in your training and think about exams. And as part of that softer landings, there's cultural experience, previous medical experience, belonging, and under that term is welcoming from the department, ensuring everyone in the department has cultural awareness, social, and trying to set up a network for the new trainee. So that's been a really robust and structured way to create a in-depth induction to help these trainees so that they can feel welcomed and that sense of belonging we're talking about.
That's great, Sigi. Thank you so much. I mean, I don't even know where to start with that. The fact that someone's considered the financial implications to our trainees before their paycheck. I mean, that's phenomenal. I had a trainee myself in distress a few weeks ago, financial distress, and signposted them to the Cameron Fund, and he'd never even heard of it, and he was, in his 3rd year of training. So it's highlighting these issues are really, really important, because we know that even when trainees CCT and they don't get their visas in a timely way, the financial impact on them is huge. And we are seeing a huge number of trainees leaving. In the report I mentioned earlier, I think 30% of the trainees that were surveyed were considering no longer working as an NHS GP because of visa issues, and 17% are considering leaving the UK entirely. And so that's nearly, I think, of the people we surveyed, about 1,200 potential GPs lost in total, which is staggering at a time when general practice is busier than we've ever been before. Now, I know we ran another poll on Twitter earlier and Instagram on questions of induction for IMGs, and significantly only 10% of people who responded on Twitter and no one on Instagram thought inductions currently worked well. 70% on Twitter and 81% on Instagram said inductions needed improvement or were actually failing. So Marla, if I can throw this one at you, thinking about what we mentioned earlier about the issues with isolation, can we address this in induction programs? And how do we translate all of your fantastic work into a general practice context? Thank you.
Well, Margaret, that's a really good question, and thank you. You know, for the just the excellent suggestions and summaries that we've heard across this sort of, if you like, virtual room from other colleagues on this panel. Now, in the induction program that we launched in June last year, as I said, it was based on what international medical graduates themselves said were not working. And I absolutely concur with Sigi about, for example, bank accounts. The General Medical Council runs a half-day seminar called Welcome to UK Practice for international medical graduates. What I learned was that because it can't be mandated, that there are, you know, GMC cannot mandate its courses, only about 30% of international medical graduates had even heard of the Welcome to UK Practice or had been informed about it by their employers. So, you know, it's the luck of the draw whether you hear about it and you're encouraged to go to London or Manchester and attend the day. Now, of course, since the pandemic, our access and the development of virtual programs has intensified so rapidly that even Welcome to UK Practice is offered virtually. Although I tend to think it would be quite nice for people to go to a face-to-face half-day seminar because they meet other international medical graduates from their region and make friends with them. So that's quite a nice thing to do. But the GMC will also tell you that that the thing that comes up all the time with their Welcome to UK Practice attendees is, how on earth do I set up a bank account? And the number of people who have said, you know, I was down to my last fiver and I really didn't have enough money for groceries. Thank heavens, another more senior international medical graduate settled in this country tided me over until the first paycheck. Now that shouldn't be. So what we did was we took down all of the sorts of problems they mentioned, not realizing until they arrived that they would need to rent accommodation or they had to find their own accommodation after a very short period of time when you know, hospitals and let me at this point just highlight that our induction program was written with trusts in mind. So although that would then include those training to become general practitioners who are doing their hospital rotations at that point in time. So you know, they hadn't realized that beyond a few days or maybe a month, they'd have to find their own rented accommodation. They didn't know where to go for groceries. They didn't know where to go, where the places of worship were. If they had families, they didn't know how to enroll them in schools. You know, the number of women who said, I was pregnant when I arrived and hadn't a clue for about 4 to 6 months as to how I was going to get antenatal care. or how do you get dental care if you needed it? The lack of information was literally astounding, and it's quite extraordinary that we have seen international medical graduates come to this country to contribute to the NHS since the NHS was launched in 1948, and we've never had a formal induction program. So if you look at the induction program, all of these things are actually listed in the guidance. So what's been published as guidance, and it says you employer will need to do all of the following. And it covers virtually everything we could think of. We tested it with IMGs. If you look at the list of contributors, it is massive. It runs to about 4 pages. So we asked them all, what would make up the pastoral care element? Then we were asked about language and communication. Many people said, we thought we spoke English until we came to England. And then discovered, we couldn't understand people and people couldn't understand us. And I would imagine that language is particularly important in general practice because of your level and depth of that relationship that you have to establish with your patients. Then we had an IT section. They were completely bewildered by our use of IT in the NHS. They said, well, I realized that if I made a mistake on uploading information on the computer, now that could get me into very, very serious trouble indeed. Then there was the clinical induction, which most people get a little bit of, but they wanted more. So if you look at the induction program guidance, it is divided up into pastoral care, language and communication, clinical induction, and specialty-specific induction, where the anaesthetists, the pediatricians, the surgeons, they've all added a section on the particular things that should go into an induction program for their specialty. Now, the reason why I say guidance is obviously how people will rent accommodation will differ in a rural area or up in Lincolnshire or somewhere compared with how it might be arranged in London or elsewhere, depending on geography, depending on the circumstances, and depending on local amenities, or what the bus routes are, and how would people access a little bit of entertainment or natural resources where they might take a walk. It would differ if they are placed in Cumbria compared with in London. So that's why what we published was guidance, leaving each of the employing organizations free to then prepare their guidance, their induction programs in whatever way they wanted. Now, the reason I mention all of this is all of it is applicable to general practice. But I think it's more complex because of the, in rural general practices, there is that issue of how do you find accommodation for your trainees, but also make sure they're not utterly isolated in a village where they don't know a soul. How do you make up for that? And I think that's going to require a level of pastoral care, befriending, making sure they're not utterly isolated, and it requires a more intensive effort there. And I think these are the sort of things that the Royal College of GPs and all of you GPs are going to have to sit together and tease out for yourselves. For example, could you link your accommodation induction together with the local NHS trusts, so that actually when the trainees come in to the general practice, they can make friends with their IMG peers who are undergoing hospital-based training. But there are ways by which economies of scale can be achieved, but also that friendship groups, the social networks, the buddying up, the mentoring, all of that could work. But the induction program is applicable in all of it to general.
Sorry, Marla did say at some point she may crash out due to IT.
Requirements of general practice. Oh, sorry, I'm so sorry. I don't know when I broke up. What point did I break up, Margaret?
You were talking about trusts being on board with the induction.
Yeah, so trusts are if I'm repeating myself, then please just tell me. The trusts, the induction program was written for trusts, and all of the parts of the induction program are applicable to general practice. I mean, I don't know whether I crashed out at that point in time. I do apologize to attendees. My internet is unstable today. So all of it is the pastoral care bit, the IT bit, the clinical induction, the specialty specific induction, which the Royal College of Anaesthetists and pediatricians and so on have put in. We need a section in there. Obviously, general practice has got to have its own induction guidance. But what I was saying was, what we published was guidance rather than actual induction, because how accommodation is offered, how bank accounts will be set up, what kind of transport routes exist, what kind of social networks exist, will differ between Lincolnshire and London and Cumbria. And so we allowed employers the freedom to, to set up the actual ways in which that guidance would then be translated into implemented, induction for themselves and as applicable in their regions. And what I said also was, the isolation issue and the housing issues are particularly challenging in general practice, in rural general practice, for example. And so linking up with local trusts to ensure that the social networks are created between trainees in trust and trainees in general practice may be one way of resolving it. Renting accommodation with the hospital, because the hospitals too will be trying to do that for their IMG trainees and their IMG locally employed doctors. So there will be ways by which those economies of scale can be achieved, but also you can strengthen the social support and the buddying and the mentoring and all that's required in order for IMGs to feel truly welcomed and valued in the area, and for them to be able to share what their problems are. That's another thing. Checking with them as to whether all their needs are taken care of, and problem solving with them if something has come up, which perhaps wasn't anticipated. We have tried to anticipate everything in the guidance, but there may still be things that we haven't thought about, and those can be resolved if there is that level of conversation between the IMG trainee and their supervisors, which apparently, your poll seems to suggest isn't happening at this point in time, but that needs to start happening. There's also, if I may just say one more thing, Damilola is absolutely right that it's about IMGs also being curious about the environment, because actually Britain is an incredibly inclusive country in many respects, and it's trying to involve themselves in local charities. If they are parents, of children who are in a school, then that becomes very easy, because you can always join parent-teacher associations. You can help with, charity efforts in the school and those sorts of things. But there are lots of different ways one can join social networks in the local area, become known, become valued as a member of that community, and start to feel that self-respect and that self-esteem, and really take some pride in where they live and where they work. So I would urge international medical graduates to also make that effort, because that it's a two-way process, and that's a win-win thing to do. So thank you, Margaret.
Thank you so much, Marla. And I agree, it is a two-way process. And I'm conscious that some groups are very equipped and they have volume in terms of, I know the Nigerian community are very good at organising themselves, but perhaps people from countries who aren't as heavily populated and who don't have a lot of people who are from the same background may struggle. So integrating themselves into the community is really important. There's been so much there to unpick, from the linguistic complexities. We had a trainee, my colleague Onyi, who's one of our educators, talks about a trainee who asked about free cash withdrawals. How can I get some of these free, the free cash? And it had to be, they had to explain it's not free. It's just that it's free to withdraw it, but you still have to, it's not free. And the volume. So there's a lot of things to absorb, Marla, with the induction. And that's why Sigi's STEP program, 2-week induction, which is collaborative with the trainer, because it can't be done in isolation, is really, really appealing. And Marla, maybe probably outside the scope of this, but you mentioned 30% of trainees had heard of the GMC Welcome to UK Practice. And I recall you speaking at a conference last year and talking about a poor response to a survey that the GMC had sent. And we kind of, I am conscious that when you say GMC to a lot of trainees, it still instills a lot of fear in them, and perhaps maybe that's why they're not engaging with it. So to come to Damilola and Khaled, if I may, you're both still very early on in your careers, and Marla's already alluded to some things that work well. Have you got any other examples of what you think are working well, or in fact what we could do better? So I'll come to Damilola first and then Khaled. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. So I'll just talk about my local faculty, which have been instrumental in obviously leading the way in equality and diversity issues. Obviously, there has been a successful webinar organized by the faculty, which obviously I've hosted along with other members of the board. I was working with Dr. Sabara Tunga, one of our education lead, and Dr. Oduwale, who's a newly qualified GP. And she was able to explain the process of this new health and care worker visa that is needed for post-CCT visas for GPs to continue working in the NHS after qualifying. And obviously this was a successful webinar because a lot of questions was raised from that event. As you highlighted in the survey from the RCGP. And obviously that led to us trying to organize a second one early in February to sort of create more awareness and give the newly qualified GPs the best way forward in applying for this visa. And one thing that I was going to highlight in this was for GPs in the position whereby if they need a visa when they're about completing their training, they shouldn't leave it very late. The best thing to do is to contact the local NHS region where they can get more information on how best to do it. But one thing is that one needs to apply one needs to look for an approved employer who's registered with the Home Office and apply for a job with them, and they will be the one to apply for a certificate of sponsorship for the visa. And then they actually need to apply for visa from 3 months before the end of your training. And obviously, this will obviously create a smooth way when you finish your training. You can continue working in the NHS GP practice. There's been several college events organized by the RCGP, which actually helps and creates maintaining a good network. And this is what I will probably encourage other members of the college to participate in all these events, whether locally or nationally, because I remember when I attended the last membership summit conference, I met one of the doctors there who I've never actually met. He's from Nigeria, but he's he actually, Dr. Izzy was a year. Well, I think he was the AIT member, and he actually got an award from that. And we had a selfie with the new chair, Camilla, when she came and passed a first comment at the college. And she asked us that whether we've met each other. I said, no, we met for the first time at the conference. And this is a way whereby we can obviously develop our network by attending conferences like this.
Thank you, Damilola. And over to Khaled.
Okay, thank you, Margaret. So I think when the induction was a little bit difficult with me personally, because I joined the training during the lockdown. So it was really tough time. I think the main help at the time was my family and my friends, which was really support during this difficult time. When we are talking about the initial things like finding an accommodation, the car, and all of this one, I think it's being still a very big issue for AIT or for a trainee or the international medical graduate who join directly to the GP. I remember at that time in 2020, I have to pay, I think, 6 months to just find an accommodation, which is a very big load, you know, with someone who was just starting a training. I like the word from Sigi when she mentioned about the cultural awareness. I think this is the core of how the trainee could understand the induction. And it's not only the language, it's not English actually, because all of us already passed the English test. And I think it's not an English test. It's to understand the culture of the UK, even the culture of the north or the south, or even Scotland, or even Wales. So it's to understand the culture. This is how you need to get in to be more aware about the induction area. For the GP, you mentioned about induction is around 2 weeks, but unfortunately, sometimes in the hospital, it will be half day. So the induction, especially in this time, we will not get a good induction in the beginning sometimes. And this is difficult sometimes our trainee would face. One of the good things really, which helped on the second year, I think when I was an ST2, that I joined the Northwest, the GB body. I think it was a very good opportunity that time, because I already passed through the same process of the junior doctor or the ST1 who just joined the training and the induction. And it would be, you know, very simple and very easy for him or for her to discuss and ask for help or ask for a question, because sometimes when you get linked to your supervisor, sometimes it will be, some people will be embarrassed, you know, to ask for help from their senior, because they will think could affect how they are seeing them and how they, you know, expecting to understand from what's the background of the trainee who asking for, like you mentioned about how to bring the free cash from the machine. Okay, so I think the best thing is to understand how the intro to the system of the international medical graduates, and which is the simple points which we could tackle and bring a support or provide a support for it. Like I said, the buddying, I think this was a very good one. And if it's been, you know, distributed all over the UK with good support from the college, I think this will be a really good help for them.
Thank you so much, Khaled. Now, before I go on, I just want to apologise. We are having some tech issues, so the reception may be a little bit patchy, but you are able to watch this back on catch-up as well, so apologies for that. And Khaled, thank you for mentioning the buddying system, because it's an opportunistic moment for me to be able to highlight the RCGP mentoring scheme. That's a place where we can make connections and gain support. And we've also got an online forum. There's another way to join the community. In fact, Azar and Uwa are our college RCGP leads for our EDI forum, and they do an excellent job of running this. Hopefully Alice and the team will be able to put the link to the forum, but that is a really, really useful way for anyone watching to engage as well. Mentoring actually came out top of our poll on the best way to champion for international graduates. Around 42.9% spoke positively of this on Twitter. On Instagram, people were fairly split between mentoring and leadership positions and integration in the community, and the college also having a role to play as well. The other important group we haven't quite mentioned yet are those senior GPs who are training new international colleagues and who are also an integral part of how we champion our future workforce. In our final poll earlier, we asked how can we best support trainers to assist their international medical graduate trainees. There was some quite mixed results here. On Twitter, the top response was diversity training with about 33%. But on Instagram, 44% of people thought encouraging IMGs to become trainers themselves would be useful. Sigi, if I may come to you as a very experienced trainer yourself, do you have any reflections on this, and what are your thoughts?
Very interesting comments so far, so thank you everyone. I mean, lots of thoughts flying around when I'm hearing these discussions, and certainly I suppose the first key fact for me is that trainers or GPs are people that really want to be there. We want to get all of our trainees through, no matter what their background is. So we've got this pastoral role, this educational role, and certainly in my locality, I know as part of my trainers group, we very much see that getting the trainee through is a big win, but also enjoying the training and understanding that background is pivotal, is crucial. So we need to understand the background of our trainee in our practice in order to help them settle and help enhance their training. There's a lot of bi-directional learning as well. We can hear a lot about their backgrounds, what's been their experience to date. What are the good things that happen? Do they have a primary care system in the countries they've trained in? What can we learn from that? So there's a huge value in this training. And for me, trainer readiness is really important. And that means having cultural awareness, understanding about unconscious bias, learning about bystander training. And so this programme that we have in Scotland does address lots of these issues. But one other thing that Khaled mentioned, which I'd like to pick up on, is, you know, you used the word embarrassment there, and talking, you know, actually, I think it's partly by making it transparent, standardise, all trainees from a different background should go through this programme. So no particular backgrounds being singled out. And as part of that programme, all of the educational supervisors, whether that's in hospital or the trainers in practice, have got a checklist, so we have the ability to bring up the difficult conversation. You know, how are your finances? How's your family? Or, you know, what are the stresses for you just now? And for the trainees to understand that everybody's getting asked the same questions, so hopefully that minimises embarrassment. With any new trainee, we use this thing called the Jaharia window. So what's known to us, known to self. And part of our job is to minimise what we call the unknown box. You know, what are the stresses for the trainee? And if the trainer doesn't know, then we can't facilitate and make that a really meaningful learning and training experience. So just picking up, for me, it's about having the conversations, normalising the conversations, letting the trainee expect and understand that that is part of our role as a trainer. And we will be asking these things and supporting, just as we would with the trainee from the UK. We want to know how they're getting on, what supports do they need, you know, what are their stresses, do they have a nursery pickup, do they have an issue, you know, an unwell relative. As a trainer, it's a very close longitudinal relationship, which is a real pleasure to have that connection and support for our trainee, no matter what their background is. I was thinking about Mala's comment as well around the GMC course and maybe reduced uptake of that. And sometimes that's about, you can imagine if you've moved to a new country, you've got housing, transport, finance, the last thing you're thinking about is, oh, I should sign up for some courses. You know, you're focusing on your basic needs. So I think getting your basic needs in place is really important. And perhaps that's why things like the STEP program, which are, you know, it's an expectation you do go through this program, and your trainer is supported by, you know, there's sessional payment to go. There's plenty of notice when the course is, so the practice knows that that's important. And so it's just placing importance as well on the courses that will be helpful.
Thank you so much, Sigi. And coming to your point, it's triggered something in me, because you talked about it's important that we don't single out trainees. And I know previously, you might remember historically, when trainees went through the national recruitment process, if you got a situational judgment test score of 2, that was a high predictor of someone who was going to struggle. And there are very good reasons as to why we would single them out, because we could provide a targeted approach for those trainees. But what saddens me is I'm hearing that on some schemes, they separate out the international graduates from the British trainees. And I've heard from some international trainees say, how are we supposed to embrace British culture if we can't even mix with our own colleagues? Because often they have the resource that we need. You know, where can I get my childcare? You know, this is where I'd like to go for a place of worship as well. So that feels like an awful shame. So I'm conscious that we're coming almost to a close. Thank you for really rich discussion. I've got a question that's been posed, if that's okay, and I'll direct it to the group. I'll start with Khaled and Damilola. And the question is this, it's keeps coming back again and again, but we should address it nonetheless. Why should I be a member of the college as an IMG? What's in it for me? So Damilola.
Oh, all right. Thanks, Margaret. I just wanted to say that, I mean, it's quite really important that we continue membership or even after training or during training, because there's a lot of resources available with the college that most of us don't actually utilize. And obviously, the first thing first is that if you really want to know the benefit, the full benefit of being a member, is actually to actually fully go through the RCGP website, because it does have a lot of information that is we sometimes take it for granted. First of all, I just want to say that in terms of your as it caters for all the different groups as a GP as a profession, because there are obviously starting from your training career, the associate in training, you have access to your chair, as is here today, and you have access to different members where you can build your network. And even me as a Force 5 GP, I do connect with other Force 5 GPs where we meet regularly. So, and also there is the later career and retired members. And I think the college actually takes care of every member, no matter where you are in your career. And also, I mean, we are elected about what different members are going through. There's opportunity for you to gain access to a mentor, and you can do that by just going on the website and you know, and register. And you know, I'm very sure that you know, you will have access to this if you're a member. And mentoring is quite important. You know, if you are in the early career stage, and you can actually be a mentor and mentor other trainees as well. And also, you know, in terms of gaining a network and building your network, which is really important when you're developing your career as a GP, because the college actually provides opportunity for you to attend a conference. I mean, you may say that you don't have to be a member to attend the RCGP conference, and that's true. But I think the benefit really outweighs you not being a member, because you also obviously be able to continue what you learn by attending different conferences, even the national conference, and obviously the local events by the faculty. And beyond that, I must say that you obviously need, as a career, whether you're a member or not a member, you need to continue to develop your professional for your knowledge. So the college has access to a lot of information, the self-help test, which obviously you can to improve your knowledge, you can go on the website and do some of these things every now and then. There are a lot of online modules there. There's GP leadership. So there are so many resources on that website that RCGP Learning will give you opportunity to learn every day. And you can also get access to the journals, the BJGP, the Innovate. So these are all benefits that being a member gives you.
Thank you so much, Damilola. You've thought of stuff that I've not even registered with me. Khaled, do you want to come in there at all?
Yeah, I think Damilola get a lot of points. Okay, I think the main one. Yeah, I think the main one is actually it's when you join the training, it's actually you would like to join a known big body, which is the Royal College of General Practitioners, and this is the main of your start of the training. That's why when you start in the beginning, I would like to be a member of the Royal College by joining the GB training. So being on the college itself, I think it's some sort of being connected to a good body is an important one for your career as a GP. As my colleague mentioned, the resources, I think there is a lot of resources, which is brilliant resources really on the website. But I realize that we, as a trainees, not all of us know these resources, and I think this will be one of our tasks in this year to explain or to explore these resources for for all the trainees, so they can get benefit for it. And it's really a full resource of a lot of knowledge there, which is really simple and easy and very helpful for you as a trainee and even when you CCT. Thank you,
Khaled. I mean, from a personal perspective, I always remember rather the trainees we had in lockdown. You made reference to them, Khaled. A lot of them struggled throughout COVID. And I think that's probably when my journey in the college was catalyzed, because, sometimes it's not just about the individual, it's about the team. So I've kind of moved away from what's in it for me, but what's in it for the collective, really, because there are so many more people that we know are struggling, and how can we help them? Sigi and then Marla, very quickly, do you want to come in there?
For me, thinking about being a member of the college is also actually, if you were thinking back to what we talked about at the beginning, a lot of the lobbying and policy making, and the importance of understanding that there's a team out there fighting for the bigger issues that are stopping us from retaining our workforce. So in some cases, we're training the workforce. In Scotland, we lose 28% of our international medical graduate trainees to other countries, and so what we need, alongside of the educational arm of the college, there's also the policy arm, the lobbying arm, and the kind of vision and shaping the future practice. There's a huge desire to get diversity within those policymakers and decision makers. Certainly I see it in Scotland. So that's certainly another reason to stay involved with RCGP. And look at who's in your local faculty, and think, actually go to a couple of meetings and speak to people, and you'll find like-minded individuals who often have a vision and a desire to make the workforce improve the working conditions and workforce as well. So even just try some of the local meetings and decide for yourself, but certainly worth looking into and sticking with.
Thank you, Sigi. And finally, but by no means least, Marla.
Well, Margaret, I'm going to speak now as a public health academic and offer four reasons why this membership is important. First of all, patients in this country deserve safe, high-quality care, whether that's being delivered by a British born and trained person or an international medical graduate. And being a member gives both the IMG and the patient and community the confidence that this is a person who's been trained and is continuing to receive the professional development to practice to a high standard. And I think that IMG should feel almost obliged to carry on in that way, so that they know they are providing that safe and high quality care. The second thing is it's an interesting question, because we should question and reflect on whether our countries of heritage would allow people without the right memberships to come and practice in our countries of heritage. I'm an Indian origin person. I can certainly tell you that it's very, very hard for international medical graduates to go and work in India, period. And then if you didn't have the right memberships and so on, goodness me, it would be tough.
I'm sorry about that. We've had tech issues all hour, so I'm going to have to finally bring things to a close. Marla, I'm so sorry. We're struggling with the tech at the moment. So that's all we have time for tonight. It's been another packed session, but I really hope we can keep the conversation going. If you are an international graduate listening, we will share some upcoming events in the chat now for you to meet local colleagues. We have a brand new stream of sessions at our annual conference this year. We're focusing it around equality, diversity and inclusion. And there's also a health and equality stream as well. So I'd encourage you all to come along and make your voices heard. Find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Use the hashtag RCGP Live to share your thoughts. Thank you once again for coming along and putting up with the tech issues that we've had all evening. And you can find all the other conversations in the series on our YouTube channel as well. So please do check these out. Like and share the video with anyone you think will be interested. And for anyone celebrating Chinese New Year this weekend, Happy New Year. So that's really all from me now. Thank you to our guests, and we hope you can join us next time. Goodbye.